Welcome to this panel on virtualization benefits and challenges for the SMB. This will be the one and only slide, so we'll spend the next hour talking about this slide. Not really. Today we have a diverse set of panelists with us who will provide end user, vendor, solution provider, and industry pundit, perspectives on the challenges facing SMB customers. To start this panel, I'll provide a brief introduction to the topic of SMB challenges, then introduce the panelists and launch into a set of questions to draw out the experience of our panelists. So who am I? If you look closely at your materials, you may be convinced that I am Arun Taneja, but that is not in fact true. I am Arun's DR failover copy, and the original data was corrupted in a hurricane. So I am a senior analyst at the Taneja Group. We are a boutique industry analyst firm, and we look at solutions and technologies out there in the market and try to provide an objective third-party opinion on their value and usefulness and how they might meet customer needs. So to get started, allow me to provide a few thoughts on server virtualization and SMB. I guess I should go back and say that I am Jeff Bowles with the Taneja Group, and you can reach me at Jeff@Taneja Group. But if you prefer to refer to me as Arun2 today, I'll respond to that too. You know, vendors have for a long time focused on delivering virtualization technologies for the big customer out there, the big enterprise shop, right? And almost to the neglect of anybody else. So they haven't really paid much attention to the SMB customer. Over the past 5 years or so, we've seen a big transformation in that behavior as they've realized that there's this big SMB market out there and there's money to be made and good solutions to be delivered to the SMB customer who faces some unique needs. And by SMB customer, I refer to that customer that's about 150 employees to about 1,000 employees. So the SMB is now a big focus, and you can see even the biggest vendors taking SMB seriously. So by a poll of hands, how many of you guys in the audience recognize yourselves as an SMB? So how many of you have deployed virtualization solutions so far? Yeah. So next question is, how many of you have seen technologies at this show that look like they are built specifically for challenges that you're facing or for SMB customers? Yeah, so 5 or 6 of you. Yeah, which is a big change over a couple of years ago. Yeah, usually you were ignored and neglected a couple of years ago. So folks out on the show floor, exhibitors, vendors, are at least starting to observe some of your challenges and build solutions. So we're here today because in the midst of this focus by vendors across the board, the SMB still faces some challenges. And some of those challenges are in common with the enterprise. Some of them stand all alone by themselves. And where you have them in common with the enterprise, they're quite often exacerbated by size and staffing limitations that you have and the budget that you have. So kind of across the board, as you look at some of those challenges, they may actually be more impactful challenges to your business than they are in the enterprise, even if you have some of those challenges in common. So I'm not going to call out the specific challenges in traditional analyst approach here, you know, by putting up survey numbers and all this jazz. I'm going to leave that to these 4 guys to identify as we go through a series of questions. And they'll, you know, the end user here will call out some of his specific challenges he's seen. And these other experts on the panel will throw in some of the stuff that they're seeing out there. But I did want to provide kind of some organization for the topics on this panel and real briefly throw some of those challenges into a couple of different buckets. Because at Taneja Group, we see the challenges kind of falling into those different buckets. One is challenges of kind of hardware and resource management as you move into these virtualization initiatives. You know, as you start virtualizing servers, you suddenly have a whole lot more horsepower you can apply to any application workload or any particular problem. But the other systems don't necessarily keep up. You know, you might suddenly put 10 VMs on a single server and not have the storage to match. So it's a real hardware engineering and architecture challenge you might be facing. And we're not really used to looking across the whole portfolio of technologies that we're running inside our business and looking at where those impacts might be. It might be on storage, might be on networking, it might be somewhere else inside your data center walls that you're seeing some problems. So the other dimension is kind of one of human power. As you start doing virtualization, some practices inside your business need to change too. You might need to change how you're doing data protection or provisioning or working with various different tools. And you might have, there might not be a whole lot of clarity on that, right? So you might have a couple of different data protection tools you can choose from. You have these snapshots and clones and DR capabilities inside your virtualization layer. Are those things better than the storage technologies you used to use or not? And the third area, I put that into a human bucket too. Virtualization brings about a lot of complexity inside your business. The big enterprise has kind of a leg up there because as they grow a virtual infrastructure, sure, they might start running into complexity because you've basically inserted this secondary layer inside of your current infrastructure. Now you have a lot of duplicate functionality in the virtual layer, right? You have some storage management you have to do around vSphere. You have storage tools you can use. There's a lot of duplication there. You have to do networking inside of vSphere as well as the network you were running before, right? So at scale, this stuff can start spiraling out of control. The enterprise, sure, you get to 500 servers and you can't grow any further. Go spend a whole bunch of money on replacing some stuff and buying some new management tools, some third-party management tools to help make you a little bit more efficient. If you don't get the right efficiency and use the right tools as an SMB right out of the box, you aren't going to grow to that point where you have a whole lot of dollars for a while to spend on new management tools and new storage infrastructure. That kind of pain is going to stick with you for a while. That may mean the SMB customer has half the efficiency from their virtual infrastructure that an enterprise can get if you don't make the right decisions out the door. For the SMB customer, things like performance, efficiency, management ease of use, these things count and determine whether your virtualization is going to pay off or whether it's just a fancy new way of standing up some servers that maybe comes with a little overhead that doesn't let you get any benefits at the end of the day. So that's enough for me. And now let's turn to our panelists here. And I am going to briefly introduce the panelists and set the rules for the game on how we're asking and answering questions today. But excuse me as I turn over to my notes here. I am only a DR copy, and I've only been failed over for about 36 hours. So to start with, on the end here is Curtis Berger. He joins us from Provider Advantage, a healthcare software and services company focused on revenue cycle management for the healthcare industry. As an IT manager in a small 24/7 shop, Curtis spends a lot of time wearing a hat of the jack of all trades, right? So like most of you guys probably do. Doing some networking, some security. He does some customer support and customer connectivity support. Yep. They have a pretty diverse operation where Curtis crosses over all kinds of areas. So I'll shuffle my notes here a little bit and actually go in order to make sense here. Next is Izzy Azari with Acronis. And Izzy has been in a senior position with Acronis for a while. And as you might recall, Acronis has some reputation in the SMB customer. They've been doing data protection and DR and kind of imaging for a while. In fact, we recently did a lab exercise with Acronis trying out their new product, which was a stellar exercise. But Izzy goes way back in the storage industry as well and has a number of perspectives to shed on challenges people are facing. And Mike Laverick, the next panelist, joins us from the far shores of the UK, where he is today the man behind the RTFM education blog, which publishes free guides and utilities for VMware customers. He's also a published author of numerous books on virtualization, an Elvis impersonator, I hear. And prior to this, Mike comes from more than 17 years of technology experience, including Novell, Citrix, Windows, and most recently VMware, where he was an instructor and received numerous vExpert awards. And on the end of our panel is Todd Barton. He's a solutions advisor in Dell's small medium business segment with prior experience crossing operational IT, product engineering, and marketing roles in storage. and in servers. So today he works with Dell SMB solutions and guides those products and technologies as they come to market to help them address the needs of SMB customers in the field. There are a few rules that I will live by today as we ask questions. Bear with me as I get to my rules. Number one, I will ask a question and direct it to a panelist. Not all of you guys know these rules, so listen up. That panelist will have 2 minutes to respond, at which point I will signal you with this fly swatter that I found on the exhibit floor. Appropriately enough, this fly swatter says on it, "Stop sucking resources." That will be your signal. Another panelist can then respond with no panelist monopolizing the speaking time for more than 2 minutes. Now that doesn't mean you need to shut up. You can still talk again after your 2 minutes. You just have to take a break long enough for somebody else to start talking. So rule number 1B, if you do not respect this fly swatter, I will put it to more creative use. And I'll point out that I have 2 in case the first one breaks. So number 2, I'll change the question when you guys run out of interesting stuff or when the audience starts to heckle you. So number 3, if someone's off topic, I'll cut in and redirect. I'm going to keep you guys focused on the questions at hand, and I'll be belligerent if I need to, so please try to stay on topic. So to start with, the first question, I'd like to start with Curtis here on the end and get a perspective from the operational IT trenches. Curtis, what virtualization initiatives have you undertaken in the past 2 years? How has it improved your IT, and what have been the biggest hurdles you've run into? And just as importantly, what challenges do you continue to face today?
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit further than 2 years, if you don't mind.
Sure.
If I don't get swatted.
Sure.
And say, you know, maybe probably 3 or 4 years ago, we got really serious about virtualizing our environment. We saw the value right away, well, rather right away for us anyway, and started to try to get as much of our environment as we could in a mode where we can get more bang for our buck. And really cost was our initial goal. We ended up finding that we didn't get I don't want to say didn't get the bang for our buck, but the reality is we didn't save any money. We spent the same money, but instead got a lot more machines in the same amount of space and for the same dollar. So we ended up putting a lot more QA machines in use. We ended up putting a lot more production machines in use. And the best part from my perspective is we have a lot more flexibility in how we do administration now from remote, since I am a full-time remote administrator as well. So that is probably the biggest initiative from a virtualization standpoint. What else do we have?
So, you know, what challenges do you continue to face today in the midst of all of that? You've obviously seen some benefits in this densification and more efficiency, right? So.
Yeah, we have challenges. Storage has been probably our biggest challenge. We never seem to have enough space. You know, we started doing storage on local disks and never seemed to have enough space at all. We didn't have an easy way to back up successfully, and for the longest time, and until, well, recently. Thank you. And we continue to fight the storage issues with never having quite the space that we really need. We did run into a domain controller that failed on us recently, and found out the hard way that our secondary domain controller was also not functional. Little things like that, and the lack of backups kind of.
So is it fair to say that maybe there's a little bit more complexity in your environment, and you're still in pursuit of simplicity and ease of use? And,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think the
good
experience
conclusion.
Curtis has is quite common from what we see in the industry. I mean, we're an SMB focused company, so we've got a lot of small customers. And what Curtis has run into with not necessarily getting the cost equation right, because in the enterprise, virtualization is all about server consolidation, saving money, being more efficient. But in the SMB, given it's a smaller environment, you don't always get that same cost payback that you were expecting to get.
Right.
But what we found with customers is a lot of smaller businesses are actually virtualizing for better DR, or better data protection because it can actually move machines around with vMotion. They can spin up the machine very quickly and another side if a machine goes down. So they get the benefits of better recovery times, more flexibility, and they don't necessarily focus on virtualization for cost. And that's definitely what we see in small customers.
And the flexibility is definitely what we're really starting to see an advantage of now. We have a SAN project we're actually still trying to get together and get to work quite the way we really want. And the net result is we have our own private cloud where we can move machines around as we need to. We can make use of resources that we otherwise couldn't make use of at all. And when somebody suddenly needs 10 new VMs with no notice, we can actually do that. We can tell them how much it's going to cost and or virtually cost up front and get their approval and proceed right away.
I think it's also worth saying, just to counter, if you like, a bit of a devil's advocate position here, that there is this kind of assumption that SMB always means that you're cost constrained. I've got some SMB customers who are basically financial houses, they're merchant banks. The number of staff that they actually have are in the hundreds, but they are making, per employee, millions and millions of dollars a year. So for them, the challenge isn't so much cost. They've got the revenue to do that. So I don't think we can always say that small means cost is always a constraint. There are some businesses which are extremely lean and efficient. They make a truckload of money, but they're still a small business. And sometimes I must admit I've been guilty when I've gone in to see a small business that I've purely been focused on the cost side of things. How can we get the cost down? And I've often been taken aback by them saying, well, this isn't really a problem for us. Cost isn't the issue. Just because we're small, don't assume that cost is always our main thing. And then the other thing I wanted to pick up just from the intro is there are certain technologies, I think, that have been regarded in the past as being the preserve of the enterprise, not for small to medium-sized businesses. But what virtualization has done is driven things that were previously beyond the scope of reach of the small to medium-sized businesses, replication being a case in point, to a situation where these sort of technologies, which were once beyond the grasp of an SMB, are now they're possible. And it's virtualization that has enabled that to occur in the first place.
So Mike, I definitely want to throw that over to Todd because, this is the voice of a company that has some expertise in driving enterprise type technologies down to SMB, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the first thing is, Curtis, if you need help with that SAN project, we're going to solve that problem as well. Absolutely. We'll talk after this. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So Mike, yeah, he's absolutely on point. Is we've driven a lot of these capabilities down into the realm of the SMB, and what we're seeing now as we continue to sort of evangelize these technologies, what they tend to demonstrate to us or reflect to us is, yes, but I'm still limited on a resource, and then fill in the blank, and it's usually time. It's usually time, or it is know-how, it's experience, and so. Yes. It's an incumbent on us as the vendor to walk them through, show them how. They need warm fuzzies because, as we all pointed out, they have to get it right the first day. Yes. There's no room for whoops that didn't work and oh I'm sorry. The budget that we spent on that is that can be absorbed. It's funny as a vendor walking into an SMB business, they've seen us all before pitching. Are making our pitch, and they're very protective of their budget. And so we not only do we have to make them feel confident, but then we have to take that to the next step and show them and make them feel that it's going to solve their problems on day one.
So give me something here that counts, guys. So give me an example of something that you've seen that's kind of too complex in the field, or where a customer was trying to deal with some resource constraint and get some solution in place. I know that's totally out of left field, so yeah.
I will take that. And this is from VMware rather than other organizations. I've come across small to medium-sized businesses that need to move their virtual machines around from one storage location to another, but the SKU that they happen to be in does not include the storage vMotion feature. This is probably something which is illegal, but I've even heard of SMB customers signing up for eval versions of vSphere Enterprise Plus to then do a storage vMotion while the host is on an eval license, and then put it back to their general license and then remove it. Now, when I see that happening, I think, why is something that is so incredibly useful being put beyond the reach of customers? You know, they're my VMs, by the way. They belong to me. And they happen to reside on my storage that belongs to me as well. So why can't I move my stuff around? Why do I need to be in a different SKU to achieve that? So if we're talking about sensitivity, the SMB want all the features that the enterprise guys have. And one thing our industry time and time again gets wrong is that the SKUs that various vendors put together, what planet do these people live on? You know, they dice and slice the features up into these various steeps, and they put the cookies in the jar I really want on the highest shelf. You know, but if a customer can completely circumvent the way, I'm going to need 2 minutes, circumvent the normal SKUs by using an eval license, what is the point in not giving that feature available to the customer to use? They will love you more for it, you know.
Absolutely.
So from your perspectives, where are those biggest challenges at right now? Where are people most in need of, you know, kind of enterprise class features where they're hardest to get right now? Is that around that enterprise license, or is there somewhere else that's a particular pain in the virtual infrastructure?
Well, I think VMware has done an awful lot in updating the SKUs, and you can see, you know, those features sort of slide their way down into lower SKUs. So we had vMotion slide into one of those SKUs. A little bit later, HA. What customers want is the DRS feature to slide down into that SKU as well.
So definitely want to hear from Todd and Curtis on this too. You know, what have you found to be hard to access or way too expensive to access?
You want to take that one? I'll follow up.
Well, if we're going to stay on the topic of, you know, VMware specifically, you know, I'd say.
Well, crossing into storage or
sure, you know, vMotion or, you know, almost anything to do with SANs. Sorry. I mean, SANs are tremendously expensive, and for the smaller company like ours, for example, even the entry-level ones, the cost per terabyte is tremendously high, and that's challenging. And as a result, we tried to white box it.
Yeah, and so I came from the EqualLogic side of the house, and that was really the basis of what we were trying to do back in those days, was to help bring simplicity to the storage platform in those days, and also from a feature perspective, bundle it into everything. So what we recognized early on is that, right, Bob the butcher still wants to be able to do what Bob the enterprise, you know, customer can do. And so, you know, some of our products have those features built in, and they continue with licensing updates or firmware updates rather. You get the new features that our engineering teams have developed, and they're beginning to be able, and just like VMware, we're continuing to push that down into some of our other product lines as well. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's difficult to capture all segments, of even, you know, inter-segments of the SMB. You can kind of think of SMB as the S, the small, and the medium business is kind of our mid-market. The mid-market guys, you know, they love our storage line. It's that S that we're still trying to wrap our arms around.
And I think what I would add to that as well is, I think it was Vaughan Stewart from NetApp who said about a year ago that VMware admins are being turned into storage admins. And, you know, yes, if you are working in SMB, you do have to wear many hats. What I've liked about some of the new kind of storage systems that are coming out, and I'm not talking about kind of mainstream vendors here, I'm thinking of the Nimbles and some of the other vendors in that space, is they've gone for a really simplistic model where all the disks in the array are shared out as a single data store. There's no LUNs, volumes, ACLs, or any of that to think about. And if we're going to, it's kind of funny, I think often the SMB, if they were listened to more, could actually teach the enterprise guys a thing or two. So I deal with an awful lot of enterprise environments that I've got robo environments, and they want to virtualize their small offices, but they just aren't geared up for thinking that way, because everything is about the data center rather than a regional branch office. So I wish there was a little bit more kind of bottom up that the SMB could feed back into the enterprise side of things. So it's not just the SMB want enterprise features, the enterprise customers can learn about how the SMBs virtualize their environments and do that more efficiently.
So, Mike, I want to hear from Izzy on this topic too, because so Acronis has some reputation here for kind of delivering SMB tools. You guys have always focused on that market and kind of cut into it faster than other people. What do you think?
I think what you're hearing us all say is that the products or solutions or storage or management that's appropriate for SMBs are those that have started from the SMB from the ground up. I mean, EqualLogic is a great example, which was a storage solution designed for not necessarily enterprise, but more mid-market or small business customers. Perhaps the same thing with Nimble, and I think that's what we're hearing from our customers as well. It's difficult to take something that they've been using in their environment, whether it's physical or enterprise, and trying to bring it down market. So simplicity is absolutely key to all of these things that customers are using in that virtualized environment, especially when it comes to SMB.
So as a roll-up, I think I'm hearing you say that the DNA of the company that's focused on SMB is a little bit different.
That's right. And it's not only from the product itself. I can tell you from a channel perspective, resellers and even end users like packaging that's simple. Not so many add-ons, not so many options, include everything all in one so I know what I get up front. I can use it. If not, I don't have to use it, but it's all up front and I don't need to pay extra. I don't need to sign on to get this. I don't need to enable this to get something else.
And I think there's a lot of hot air spoken about agility in the enterprise. And the reason that enterprises talk about agility so much is because they know they don't have it. And what they want is to have the same agility that a small to medium-sized business can have, because you don't have all those tiers of management. And I'm not saying that small to medium-sized business doesn't have change management control. There's plenty of them that do. And you can kind of see how the enterprise side of things of the house are trying to mirror or get to that level of agility that a small to medium-sized business has. So to give credit to Dell and to NetApp and to EMC, a lot of them have made a lot of investment in these plugins to Virtual Center. That means cloning a virtual machine or snapshotting a virtual machine, or even more still, provisioning new storage to a whole cluster of hosts is a click away. And for the last 6 months, I have not gone into any of the kind of high-end management tools that come with the arrays I've got. I mean, I've got all manner of stuff from EMC, NetApp, and Dell. I'm creating volumes and LUNs through the plugins. Click, click, and it's done. So the enterprise want that simplicity, so does the SMB. And it just has to be made available to all tiers of those different kind of size of businesses.
So let's move on to, I'm going to cut through the question 3 here because the second one on my list we've pretty much answered. So Izzy, this question's for you. I haven't really heard anybody on the panel yet talk about the process of figuring out what to do as a virtual exercise, identifying what it takes to get there, and then figuring out how to get there, right? So identifying what it takes and actually getting there is sometimes a learning experience, right? So Acronis has been in the business helping customers move data for a while. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen as fundamental challenges and some of the best strategies for getting into virtualization?
It's funny, when people talk about virtualization, they get really excited because of all the benefits it brings, and spinning up VMs quickly, or saving money on cost and being more agile, as Mike said. But a lot of them don't really consider everything that they need to do in order to get there. Moving their applications obviously on a virtualized environment, testing those applications to make sure they still work, connecting those back to the network, provisioning the storage in the back end and making sure that storage is available for those key applications. And if you're running a SaaS-based application, how do I connect my internal environment to that SaaS-based app? So what we advise customers to do, and I encourage everyone to do, is really try to plan out maybe virtualization in steps. Virtualize perhaps an application or a data center or a remote office, for instance, and move in steps as opposed to a broad-based movement, because it's challenging to really move quickly if you don't have the resources. And typically, small to medium businesses don't necessarily have all of the IT resources, perhaps as larger companies do.
That puts it mildly.
Yeah, I was going to just follow up. The way we've kind of pictured this or observed this is the customer's on like a journey, right? It's on an evolution. And I call our team members, I call them Sherpas, and they're guides. We're not there to tell them what to do, but we are simply guides up through this mountain. And typically it starts off, well, I just want basic server virtualization, right? I get it. I find the value in that. I love the right-click done model and provision new machines. And then it's our duty to continue along that journey and to talk about the tier 1 applications. I think we saw a couple of slides where tier 1, what are considered tier 1 ups like SQL and Exchange, it's beginning to be put on virtualized platforms. And that's what the technology is there. It's supported. We can do that. And so we continue to walk them through that journey. We talk about data protection, offsite data protection, business continuance. That flows all the way into, at some point, we get into the virtual desktop space, which is an interesting topic in SMB. And then finally, they start, SMB is beginning to start to understand this whole thing about cloud. And earlier on in 2010, man, if I brought up cloud, they would walk out the door. But now they're becoming a little bit more comfortable with this idea of this cloud. It's a little more real to them. So it's not an overnight process. I think Izzy's spot on, is that we have to guide them through, be that Sherpa and walk them up the mountain.
So make some generalizations here. What do you see customers in the SMB market do first as far as getting their toes in the water around virtualization? Yep. And if you were building a new Sherpa staffing model, where are the Sherpa skill sets most needed at?
Yeah, obviously for our guys, a lot of things that's important to us is that we have to be top notch. We have to be blue ribbon, and that means we have to have our certifications. We'll go into a lot of our SMB environments, and they have their VCPs, and so they spot us very quickly. If we're not up to their level, they'll throw us right out the door. And so once we get past that, it's all right. Those tend to be already virtualized. To get them up to the next step, we have to show them. We have to do really deep dive analysis of their environments, what they're trying to do. We've got a lot of tools that allow us to do that. So there's a lot of tools and analysis and workload measurements that go on. And if we can show them pristine detail as to what this would look like on their shared storage, once we virtualize those other applications, how we protect them, then they become more comfortable.
I mean, what I would add to that is get educated. As Alexander Pope once said, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Now, I don't think this probably applies to people in this room, because getting manager approval to attend VMworld means you've probably got over one of the major hurdles. But whenever I've dealt with SMB, the consistent story is, oh, I'd really love to go on the training courses for VMware, but I just can't get approval from my management to do that. And one of the things, as a former instructor, has always kind of made me a little bit frustrated is businesses seem to put an awful lot of their value in the hardware and the software that they acquire, but they don't seem to put the same value into the skills of their staff. I guess this is kind of assumption that they might wander off and go somewhere else. But hardware depreciates until it's worth nothing, and once it falls out of warranty, and your software goes the same way. I think the SMB and all businesses generally have to realize that their primary asset is the staff that they employ. And I applaud VMware for being one of the few companies that said, oh, well, you think a barrier of adopting VMware is you don't have the skills for it? Well, here's 2 passes to attend any VMware course if you buy this particular SKU. And I wish that the other vendors take a similar kind of attitude to that, because it's not just about having the engines, it's the driver behind that engine that needs to know how to make that move and make it do what the company bought it for.
The other thing I was going to say that Acronis has done that's very specific when it comes to this and virtualizing SMBs is give customers option to roll back. So you'd be amazed at how many customers use the Acronis P2V tools, but you'd be even more amazed on how many customers actually use V2P. So having that option to actually roll back to physical in case your application vendor is not supporting the bug that you have in your application, or something happened to the end user's data and you need to go back onto the physical hardware, or other issues, you'd be amazed on how much that actually happens. So having that option to actually roll back from a V2P perspective is something we're surprised to see, but it's popular.
So I want to hear from Curtis too.
To Mike's point, this is trying to get training as SMB is often very challenging. The time away. I mean, we've all got to be generalists in an SMB, And it's very difficult to justify the time away and difficult to justify the cost of the class itself and the transportation and the whole thing. And that may be only a few $1,000s, and a few $1,000s can, at times make or break some SMBs depending on their size. And those, things like virtualization are critical to success for some of us, like Provider Advantage. But a lot of it we have to figure it out on the fly and hope we get it right the first time and don't fall on our face.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same challenge exists for consultants and contractors who, take a personal hit when they attend a course on what they make per day, but they've got to invest in their skills to secure their future going forward.
So Mike, I'm going to re-gear you guys a little bit because we've focused in pretty much on human resources, but on human skill sets. I want to keep the discussion here a little bit broader than that. What are some of the other challenges that you're seeing besides just the training?
I think the other challenge that I see an awful lot that the SMBs have is getting a robust backup and recovery in place. And there has
You're too nice, Mike.
And the challenge has been, I think in the eco space, there's been a number of vendors who have offered replication to the virtual machine. I think Vision Core is a case in point. Veeam is also there as well. What's missing in the SMB market is the same level of automation that customers who have Site Recovery Manager might enjoy. And they feel priced out of that kind of level of DR and replication.
Very much so.
And I keep on saying to the likes of Veeam and others, this is great, but you really need to do the automation piece. So I can do tests and bring up virtual machines. Don't hold back on just getting the data from one location to another. Go the extra mile and help automate that process for me, because that's where the real legwork is. Getting your files from one location to another is one thing, but getting those VMs started up and working in the right order is actually where the fun starts. So that still remains a challenge. There's surprisingly few people who are in the industry who kind of compete at that kind of level. I think Virtual Sharp is probably an example. And the second thing to say is a challenge for both SMB and also enterprises. When you come to these events with VMware, the emphasis is on the virtual machine, things like HA and FT. But I'm sorry to say that none of those technologies do anything for the uptime of my services. And if we are generally moving into this zone of it's the application, the service that matters, then really we need something that is in-guest to deliver those kinds of uptimes to the services that we're providing to users. And it's not just an enterprise thing. When that mail server goes down or that database server goes down in this small business I'm dealing with, it's millions of pounds that are being lost in that potential. And the virtual machine availability on its own is only going to get you so far. So that seems to be the main challenge that I see in the SMBs.
So, Mike, yeah, you get pretty far along there. I want to come back to the DR topic, but what I've heard kind of articulated as challenges on the path of getting to virtualization, going back to this original question, there's this idea of human skill sets. There's this idea of data protection and rollback, which I think is a key focus area. Time and again we hear storage. What's been a surprise or two for you guys? Have any surprises? And Curtis, do you have any particular stories from the field? What happened during if you were to call out one incident during your path to virtualization that caught you off guard, what would that be? And how did you get over the challenges of data protection originally, and how did you get past the challenges of storage?
Well, storage we're still fighting, so we're still beating that to death.
And how long?
We can still help you. We can still talk about that.
Yeah. So how long?
If we were to talk about the data protection aspect, that's certainly something that until very recently we had some serious problems with. We started off with the industry leader. We were using. I don't know if I should name names against some of the ones
you can stay generic.
Okay. So
whatever you want.
A market leader who is not in this panel was being used, and we recognized them, big brand name, et cetera, and thinking they would do the need and be able to back up everything we needed. But they wanted extra money for each new feature, and the product wouldn't successfully back up our applications. It wouldn't successfully back up our VMs. And what it really came down to is the features, individual features wouldn't work with each other. 2 hours on hold for support, that sort of thing. And so that was constantly a problem for us. We moved on to another product. It was a little bit less well known and had some more challenges with support and being able to get the product to do what we needed, even do some basic backups of our file server went badly, and then and this is right around the time that we were starting to virtualize everything and get really serious about getting more of our environment virtualized, and found out that the cost to get the VMware specific or virtualization specific licensing was going to triple our cost for this backup application. So there was just no real reason to keep that, and then we stumbled across something a little bit better.
And Curtis, were you doing per VM backup at that point?
That was the only option that we had at the time, yeah.
So with a traditional client agent on the
it was,
VM and running it back to media server or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many VMs were you at that point where that started to break your back?
Somewhere around 80.
Okay.
And we're a very small shop, and we probably have 3 machines for each person who works in our company. So
okay, so don't think I'm done with this idea of challenges, and we're coming back to other wrinkles you ran into.
Sure.
Izzy, you recently introduced VM Protect 6.
We did.
What made you do that, and what did you see going on in the market? And by the way, we did a test report recently on VM Protect 6.
That is
put it through the
available.
paces in the lab. Yeah, it's available down on the show floor, and we were pretty impressed with what we saw. But more importantly, Izzy, since we're right here in the middle of the panel and you have to make a definitive decision, I'd like a copy of that for my home lab. You're going to provide me with that, right?
You get a lifetime copy.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think, the genesis behind VM Protect 6 was all about simplicity. And, we as a backup vendor evaluate what's out there in the market. We talk to customers, we talk to partners, and try to figure out what's out there today that's not fitting the requirements of the customers. And the biggest challenge that we saw was not around, how do I back up or how do I recover or what's the performance. It's around simplicity. It's around having something that's very, very simple to deploy and manage in a VMware virtualization environment, especially because the person actually doing the backups is not necessarily the storage guy. It's the VI admin. It's the person managing the virtualization environment, like Curtis here. And so VM Protect 6 is all about simplicity when it comes to data protection and DR. Very easy to install, easy to license, easy to use, very, very simple to recover. And in talking to the team at Dell and to talking to other partners, they're excited about it because they feel that customers are going to be excited about it. So we'll see how it goes, but VM Protect 6 is all about simplicity.
I think the biggest challenge around backup is the same one that we've had since we started virtualizing, and that's the emphasis is far too much on how do I back up and not enough on how do I actually restore.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who think you never buy backup software, you buy restore software. We should not call it what we call it, because I use it for a particular reason, which is to get back my data I have lost. And I think it's really only in the last 18 months that I feel personally that virtual machine backup has got to the same level of maturity as agent-based backups that were in guest, because you'd be shocked at what some of the processes were like just even 2 years ago to restore something. You'll restore the entire VMDK to then take out a 1K file to then copy it across a hidden CIFS dollar share into the VM. I mean, I was used to with proper in guest backup. A catalog, I would select, original location, different location, there's the target. The idea that I was going to download zip files and extract them and copy them across, and I've lost terabytes worth of storage? I don't think so. That's just not going to work. But it's only really in the last 18 months that I think we've got to the kind of maturity where you could honestly say the quality of backup that you do at a virtual machine level is as good as an in-guest agent would be.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I observed too. It's been a while since I was hands-on with a virtual machine backup technology, but since I've managed decent-sized shops in the past, running some of that traditional backup software, I could actually consider moving to virtualization just to get rid of the backup legacy and move to what I saw in the virtual infrastructure. So, but Todd, I want to throw something. If you have a comment there, make it. But I want to throw something over to you.
I think there's still more we can do for the industry when it comes to backup. I think we've done a good job for customers, but for instance, when it comes to your applications and you want to recover an email or an application, who wants to spin up an Exchange server just to get an email out of it? from a recovery perspective. That takes a pretty long time. So I think there's still more that we can do to help customers along this journey of the recovery aspect and making that recovery easier for them.
Well, and who wants to call support just to be able to figure out how to do that recovery? As an SMB, we're generalists, and it's like, okay, we try to do the recovery and it fails, and we spend 2 hours on support. In the meantime, either the file is inaccessible or the machine is still down. We're not making any progress. That simplicity goes a long ways.
So, Todd, clearly we've had simplicity come out here. So if we go back and think about some of the things we've identified, there's a little storage conversation. There's been, skill sets. There's been data protection as important elements. Getting back, not just locking yourself into virtualization with no path back, but maintaining enough flexibility in your approach where you can get your toes wet, step back out if you need to. So let's expand on simplicity a little bit more, because I suspect that you guys win deals around simplicity sometimes. Can you tell me a little bit about simplicity within the Dell kind of approach and where you're seeing that be a key differentiator?
Sure, yeah. Because that is our message is the simplicity side. From all the features being built into our EcoLogic portfolio, and then to solve the administrator who wears many hats, right, as opposed to a pit crew of experts at a larger company. We have to be able to bring some of those features into a common management interface. And so what we want to avoid is, I think we alluded to it earlier, is going from the virtual center or the vCenter screen to the virtual admin screen to the storage admin screen to all these screens, and try to collapse that into one simple management interface. And
don't say single pane of glass.
No. I'm going to keep it away from that general term. But what we're talking about is the management interlock, right? And so what we have done is we've taken a lot of our storage capabilities and we have bubbled it up or surfaced it into that vCenter screen, right? That vCenter screen, management screen. And so that solves a lot of the bouncing around. And then the other thing we have to take into consideration is that, we have data protection capabilities as well through the use of snapshots, and we have built-in replication. But, those are introducing different layers of the overall data protection plan. And we don't solve all of our problems through that. We rely on our technology partners like Acronis to fill in those gaps and give a little more granularity to the overall protections.
So let me give you a little help here. The markets recognize SMB space, right? So lots of people are coming on strong with this kind of idea of simplicity and lots of click-through wizards and that kind of stuff. Big three-letter companies that are doing kind of wizardry, automated type stuff. Mm-hmm. So differentiate yourself there a little bit. Where you think that stuff boils up, and what does a customer find in the Dell offerings that's unique? Yeah,
so a lot of it just is the genesis days. I mean, we were born with this idea of simplicity. It's always been in our DNA. And so we've always done simplicity right out of the gate, right out of the box. And so, so we've ensured that it's a click done model. Our storage guys carry the arrays with them in the trunk of their car. I have one in my car. Who doesn't, right? So we carry these things around and we bring them into our customers' environments, and we build a SAN in front of them in about 5 minutes. And so we're trying to demonstrate that. And I don't know too many other storage vendors that have that kind of capability. And so we're leveraging, common Ethernet link layer type of technologies, IP. People, folks out in the audience are pretty familiar with IP. And then we make sure that we implement or embed, if you will, the snapshot cloning, integration with VMware, replication, cloning, thin provisioning. All of that stuff is just simply built in. So that's the message we go with to help try to differentiate ourselves. It's more competitive, certainly now than it was several years ago, but that's the message we just keep replaying.
We are going to stop in just about 30 seconds for some audience questions. So.
Okay. I don't want to come across as somebody who particularly endorses one vendor over another, but I've recently had very good relations with Dell. I've got Dell EcoLogics in my environment for my SRM project, and I was very impressed with the rapidity of how that system was set up and configured and made to work in a very short period of time. I wouldn't say that was just a Dell thing. There are other vendors who have had similar good experiences, but I've had experiences with a certain storage vendor who will remain unnamed where it felt like I had to have a team of 5 or 6 people in white coats surrounding the array going, live, live. And then they go, it lives, it works. And then, to be fair, once they've made it work, it was rock solid. But I sat there thinking, God, you know, if something does go wrong with this thing, will I be able to fix it on my own? So when we talk about simplicity, especially SMB, is I want to be able to fix things without having to raise a support call that lasts for 2 hours. Yeah, absolutely. So this thing about simplicity isn't just a buzzword. It's about being able to fix my stuff quickly without having to take it higher. And when I see vendors where I do need a team of, like, you know, your pit crew to make it work, it's off-putting, you know. And I was pleased to find that Dell wasn't in that category. Yeah,
that's to finish that up. The one thing that we've learned is the dollar per unplanned change is the biggest cost on SMB. We'll provide solutions for the problem at hand, but it's down the road. The unplanned change, the workload grew, the environment grew. That customer took on more customers, so they're growing. So the other things I haven't mentioned are, you know, the automatic load balancing from a network perspective to a storage perspective, and how we sort of make sure that everything is in balance over time. And so if we can alleviate those kinds of unplanned change mechanisms and not have to call support, the storage just sort of figures it out and says, yeah, you need to live here.
And the storage vendors who get this right are the entry-level array is managed exactly the same way as the array which, you know, is a humdinger. And again, there's not all storage vendors who fall into that camp. They have a range of product ranges which differ massively between each other.
Okay. So any questions from the audience for any of these guys? Keeping in mind that you have an end user here that has some good stories from the field. You have a data protection vendor here that thinks specifically about the SMB. You have Elvis.
Love me tender.
And you have a fairly diverse SMB provider. Yes?
Totally missed the elephant in the room. Have you, for your organization, considered moving any of your infrastructure out to public cloud?
Considered, yes. We're a HIPAA shop, and so we're really sensitive to what we're doing with that. And part of my visit here is to get a better understanding of what that can mean.
I think from a trend perspective, what we've seen, you know, we've got thousands of customers around the world, and when it comes to cloud, most SMBs, at least that we talk to, are thinking about cloud as a secondary option for data protection. So they're still doing a lot of what they do normally on-premise with their data center that they have, but they're looking at cloud as a tape replacement, archive, long-term retention. Some of the more advanced companies are thinking about recovery in the cloud as well. You know, what do I do if my data center goes down? But that's kind of a secondary movement, I think, from what we see.
And we're only just starting to explore that as an option.
Email out and web e-portal out. A lot of my SMB customers no longer want to manage their own Exchange environment. They're quite happy to go to an external provider for their email. And if they have got a presence on the internet by which they're selling their product, that's out as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with all those points, absolutely. If I had a choice to migrate my Exchange offsite, I would.
Just to follow up, it's the backup. It's the backup to the cloud is where we're seeing a lot of our SMB customers go. And that's why I really like the Acronis option.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yep.
Oh, yes, sir.
So how many physical machines did you start out with when you began?
Okay. As far as number of machines, we probably had maybe 20 pieces of hardware when we started the project, 20 servers roughly, and we're probably still right about that same number with around 14 of those being ESXi servers today. So that really hasn't changed. The number of total machines that we have out there and available and running has gone up tremendously. At any point in time, we probably have around 60 of them running. Sometimes that goes up to around 80, and we have about 100 VMs that we've got in storage to bring online at any time. So we have a lot more machines total available today. As far as
storage, but let me probe you on that one a little bit further. So that's a pretty low VM density, number of virtual machines per piece of hardware. Why is that?
Mostly it is about getting performance. We have a really unusual means of guaranteeing performance, and my customers, my end users that are internal to our company want a very guaranteed means of, or a very guaranteed set of resources on each of their VMs, and they've kind of fought virtualization to some degree mostly from lack of education. And so they're all allocated a set number of resources. So yeah, on average we probably have, I guess it really depends, 5 to 8. Some of them will only have a couple of VMs on a single machine. And we're also running not the highest end boxes. I mean, our newest ones they're Dell R410s.
So if you were surfing eBay for your next favorite storage system, what would be your priorities?
Cost, and no. in order, cost, capacity, and speed.
So what would you look for in a storage system besides that, though? Surely there's something else besides that, right? So you think you would fix all of your storage problems with just raw speed, or
no? That is a very complex question. I don't think I can answer this quickly, but it needs to have interoperability. I mean, for us, we've pretty well settled on an iSCSI solution. It needs to run on our existing infrastructure. It needs to be easily managed by our very, very small IT staff. It needs to be easily trained, as we do. We need to teach someone else how to use it. We need to show them how that's going to work, and have some of the features that some of the products out there will have. I mean, simple things like snapshots. You don't think that's that difficult, but the reality is we're using a white box solution today. And
for storage?
For our storage, we're using a white box for a SAN.
iSCSI based?
iSCSI based, yeah. And it worked very well until we ran into a bug. I mean, the bug got bad at higher performance numbers. The bug reared its ugly head, and LUNs started getting locked, and that became a problem. So reliability should certainly be in there, but I kind of hope that's a given, rather than not having to give that as a priority.
Can I say what I would want in a storage system? NFS. When you compare NFS to iSCSI and Fibre Channel, it's much more simpler in comparison.
Yes.
Both on the ESX side, but also on the configuration. My array would be backed with either solid state or SSD drives on the front with some kind of SATA at the back. I'm not convinced that I can go fully solid state in an SMB. It's too expensive.
Agreed.
But what that will empower me to do is to take those applications where people perceive, rightly or wrongly, that storage is going to be the bottleneck, and show them that I can actually cane this system with kind of phenomenal IOPS that I would probably need 3 times the number of spindles to get the same performance out of it. And I'm actually getting performance out of it with half of the rack space or half of the power requirements. That's the kind of storage system that I want. And your attempt to try and get something for nothing. I'm going around all these storage vendors going, I really, really like this, and I really want to do a podcast with you, but I think I really need it racked up in my environment first. And so I know how well it is, because it's beyond. I mean, I'm the ultimate SMB. I'm a company of 1 employee. I employ myself.
There's a sand in Todd's car if you want.
So I have to pimp my ass around and try and get things for free. Pardon? he signs off my expenses really easy. But I can't get my hands on solid state without, but if you've got the budget, NFS and solid state is something I think you should be really looking at it. And there's a whole host of vendors, not just the big ones, but the smaller players that have come in to the play in the last year or two.
Keep in mind that Mike makes most of his money off of Elvis impersonation, so his budget's pretty good. So. Okay, guys, that concludes our panel here, because I believe we're at time, right? And I'm going to get pulled off the stage physically here pretty soon. So
thanks a lot. Thank you.
Elvis has left the building.
Thanks.